I started noticing him about 3 months ago, though, if I'm being honest, I probably noticed him long before I was willing to admit it to myself. You know how it is when something catches your eye, but your brain isn't quite ready to process what that means, what it might say about you. So you just file it away, pretend it's nothing, go about your day. That's what I did with him at first. My apartment is on the corner of Maple and 3rd, second floor, with these big bay windows that look out over the street. I moved in last October, right after things fell apart with my ex-girlfriend. Yeah, girlfriend. That's where this story gets complicated, or maybe where it gets simple, depending on how you look at it. Either way, those windows became my favorite part of the apartment. I'd sit there in the mornings with my coffee. I'm watching the neighborhood wake up. It was peaceful, predictable, safe. And then there was him. He walked past every morning at exactly 7:15. I know because I checked my phone the third time I saw him, telling myself I was just curious about the time, not about him. He was tall, maybe 6'1" or 6'2", with dark hair that always looked like he'd just run his hands through it. He wore this olive green jacket most days, the kind that looked expensive but not showy, and he had this walk, this confident but unhurried stride that made it seem like he had nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. The first few times he'd just walk straight past, heading south on 3rd Street. Normal, unremarkable. But then I started to notice something strange. Some mornings, he'd walk past my building. I'd continue to the end of the block, and then I'd see him again a few minutes later, walking past from the other direction. Like he'd gone around the entire block just to pass my windows twice. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was coincidence, that I was reading into things because I was lonely, because I'd spent the last 6 months trying to figure out who I was after Sarah left, after she told me she could feel me pulling away even though I swore I wasn't, even though I tried so hard to be present, to be enough, to be what she needed. But the thing is, I wasn't pulling away from her. I was pulling away from myself. It took me weeks to notice the pattern. He didn't do the double pass every day. Maybe 3 times a week, sometimes 4. Always on different days, never predictable enough that I could anticipate it. But when he did it, I'd catch myself standing up from my chair, moving closer to the window, watching him disappear around the corner, and then waiting, my heart doing this stupid flutter thing until he appeared again. I started wondering about him, what his name was, where he was going, whether he lived in the neighborhood or was just passing through, whether he'd noticed me watching him, this pathetic guy in the second-floor window with his morning coffee and his messy hair and his whole life in boxes he still hadn't unpacked. His name, I eventually learned, was Casemir. I found out because I finally worked up the nerve to go to the coffee shop he sometimes carried a cup from. It's this little place called Brew Haven, about 4 blocks from my apartment. I walked in on a Saturday morning, trying to look casual, like I just happened to be there. And the barista, this friendly woman with purple hair, called out, "The usual, Cass," to someone behind me. I turned around and there he was, closer than I'd ever seen him, close enough that I could see his eyes were this deep brown, almost black, and he had a small scar above his left eyebrow. He smiled at the barista, said, "You know it, Mel." And then his eyes met mine for just a second, maybe less, and I felt something in my chest shift, like furniture being rearranged in a room I thought was already perfectly organized. I ordered some complicated drink I didn't even want, paid too much, and left before he could see my hands shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that moment, that split second of eye contact, trying to decode it like it was some kind of message. Was there recognition there? Did he know I was the guy in the window? Or was I just another stranger in a coffee shop, completely unremarkable, utterly forgettable? I thought about Sarah again, about the night she sat me down and said we needed to talk, and I knew before she even started what was coming. She'd asked me if I was happy, and I'd said yes automatically, because that's what you're supposed to say, right? You're supposed to be happy with a beautiful, kind, intelligent woman who loves you. You're supposed to want the life you're building together. But she'd seen through it. She always could. She'd asked me again, softer this time, really asked me, and I'd broken down and told her I didn't know, that I felt like I was playing a part in my own life, that something felt off, but I couldn't name it, couldn't explain it, yet couldn't fix it. She'd cried, but not in the way I expected. She'd held my hand and told me it was okay, that she'd rather I figure myself out than spend the rest of our lives pretending. She was better than I deserved. Still is. After that night with the coffee shop encounter, Casimir's walks became something I lived for. I'd wake up early, make coffee I didn't really want just to have a reason to be at the window. On the days he did the double pass, I'd feel this surge of something I couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe, possibility, terror. Then one morning in early March, everything changed. It was raining, that soft spring rain that makes everything look watercolor blurred and romantic. I was at my usual spot, watching the street, not really expecting to see him because who walks in the rain when they don't have to? But at 7:15 exactly, there he was. No umbrella, just the olive jacket with the hood up, walking past my building. I watched him reach the corner, turn left, and I waited. Counted the seconds, 1 minute, 2. And then there he was again, walking back past, slower this time, and he stopped. Right there on the sidewalk below my window, he stopped and looked up. Our eyes met through the rain-streaked glass, and this time there was no mistaking it. He saw me. He'd known I was there all along. He raised one hand in a small wave, almost tentative, and smiled this smile that made my entire chest ache. I did the stupidest thing I could have done. I ducked away from the window like a startled cat, heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. When I finally got the courage to look again, he was gone. I spent the rest of that day convinced I'd ruined everything, though I couldn't have told you what everything even was. A potential friendship, a connection with someone who might understand whatever it was I was going through, the possibility of something I wasn't ready to name. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went out. There's this bar in the neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a local place where people gather to drink and talk and forget about their lives for a while. I needed to forget about the morning, about the look on Casemir's face when I disappeared from the window like he'd scared me off. The bar was called the Violet Hour, and it was exactly the kind of place I usually avoided. Too intimate, too much chance of actual human connection. But I went anyway, ordered a whiskey I didn't really like, and sat in a corner booth trying to look like someone who did this all the time. I was halfway through my second drink when he walked in. Casemir looked different out of context, without the morning light and the distance of my second-floor window between us. He looked real, solid, absolutely terrifying in his realness. He was with 2 other guys, both laughing at something he'd said, and they headed to the bar without noticing me in my corner. I should have left. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. But I stayed, watching him the way I'd watched him all those mornings, except now I could hear his voice. It was deeper than I'd imagined, with this warmth to it that made everything he said sound important, even when he was just ordering a beer. You know, it's less creepy if you just come say hello. I nearly jumped out of my skin. One of the guys he'd come in with was standing next to my booth, grinning down at me. He was shorter than Casemir, with bright red hair and an expression that suggested he found the entire world amusing. "I don't know what you're talking about," I managed, which was possibly the least convincing lie I'd ever told. "Sure you don't. I'm Felix, by the way, and you're the guy from the window." He slid into the booth across from me without waiting for an invitation. "Cass has been trying to work up the nerve to talk to you for weeks. Well, months, if I'm being honest. You really did a number on him this morning, disappearing like that." My brain was short-circuiting. "He's been trying to talk to me. Why do you think he walks around the entire block? He's hoping you'll come down, or wave, or do literally anything other than just watch him like he's a character in a show you're streaming." Felix's grin widened. "Don't get me wrong, he thinks it's adorable, but also maddening. He's not usually this bad at talking to people he's interested in." Interested in. The words hung in the air between us, impossible and wonderful and absolutely terrifying. "I'm not," I started, then stopped. "Not what? Not gay? Not interested? Not ready?" All of those things felt both true and completely false at the same time. Felix's expression softened. "Hey, I get it. Coming out, figuring yourself out, all of that. It's a lot. But for what it's worth, Cass is one of the good ones. Patient, kind. The kind of guy who'll walk around the block twice just to see you for a few extra seconds without putting any pressure on you to acknowledge him." He stood up then, patted the table twice. I'm going to go back to my friends now. But if you want to come say hi, we're friendly. No pressure, just humans being human. I sat there for what felt like hours, but it was probably only minutes, my drink warming in my hand, my heart doing gymnastics in my chest. Through the crowd, I could see Casemir at the bar, laughing at something, completely unaware that his friend had just turned my entire world inside out. I thought about Sarah again, about the relief I'd seen in her eyes when I'd finally admitted I didn't know who I was or what I wanted, about how she'd told me that pretending was the cruelest thing I could do to both of us, about how she'd given me permission to figure myself out, even though it meant losing what we had. I finished my drink, set the glass down, and stood up before I could talk myself out of it. Walking across that bar felt like walking across an ocean. Every step was heavy with significance, with the weight of admitting something to myself that I'd been avoiding for longer than just the 3 months I'd been watching Casimir walk past my window. Maybe my whole life, if I was being honest. Felix saw me coming first and elbowed Casimir, who turned around with a beer halfway to his lips. When he saw me, his entire face transformed. That smile again, the one that made my chest ache, except now it was directed at me from 3 feet away instead of through rain and glass and distance. Hi, I said, which was possibly the most inadequate greeting in the history of human interaction. Hi, he said back, and somehow he made those 2 letters sound like an entire conversation. I'm Levi, I continued, because apparently I was committed to stating the obvious. I know, he said, and then immediately looked embarrassed. I mean, I asked around, not in a creepy way, just, curious, about the guy in the window who makes really good coffee every morning. You can smell my coffee from the street? No, he laughed, but I can see you enjoying it. You have this expression, like each sip is the best thing that's happened to you all day. It's nice. Makes me want to know what else gives you that expression. Felix made a sound that might have been a cough, or might have been him trying not to laugh. The third friend, he who I later learned was named Marcus, was openly grinning. Do you want to sit? Casimir gestured to an empty table near the back, away from his friends and their barely contained amusement. We could talk, if you want. No pressure. No pressure. The same thing Felix had said. I wondered if they'd coordinated that, or if it was just something Casimir said naturally, this built-in understanding that some people needed space and time and the freedom to choose without feeling cornered. We sat. The table was small enough that our knees almost touched underneath it, and I was hyper-aware of every inch of space between us, every breath, every small movement. So, he started, then stopped, ran his hand through his hair the way I'd seen him do 100 times from my window. This is weird, right? I feel like I know you, but also don't know you at all. You walk around the block, I said, to pass my building twice. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Felix told you. Why do you do it? He was quiet for a moment, turning his beer bottle in his hands. Honestly? Because seeing you there, in your window with your coffee, it's the best part of my morning. And I'm selfish enough to want it to last a little longer. So I walk around the block and get to see you again. And for a few extra minutes, I get to wonder about you, what you're thinking, what makes you smile, whether you'd ever consider talking to a guy who's probably coming across as a stalker right now. Not a stalker, I said quickly, just someone who notices things. What do you notice? He asked, leaning forward slightly. Everything, I wanted to say. The way you walk like you're completely comfortable in your own skin. The way you sometimes stop at the corner and look up at the sky like you're checking in with the universe. The way you made me feel something I've been too scared to feel, too scared to even acknowledge, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Instead, I said, your coffee order. Medium roast, no sugar, splash of oat milk. His eyebrows shot up. You went to Brewhaven. I wanted to know your name. And now you do. He smiled again, softer this time. What are you going to do with that information? It was a challenge, and an invitation, and a question, all at once. What was I going to do? Keep watching from my window? Keep pretending I didn't feel whatever this was? Keep running from the truth that had been staring me in the face every morning at 7:15? I don't know, I admitted. I'm still figuring things out, about myself, about what I want. I'm not very good at this. At what? Being honest, being brave, being anything other than scared. Casimir reached across the table then, not touching me, but close enough that I could have closed the distance if I wanted to. Can I tell you something? You're braver than you think. Just being here, talking to me, admitting you're scared. That takes courage. And for what it's worth, I'm scared too. Of what? That you'll disappear again. That this is a one-time thing. That I've built you up so much in my head that the real you won't match and I'll be disappointed, or worse, that I won't match what you need and you'll be disappointed. He paused. Mostly that second one. We talked until the bar closed, about everything and nothing. Then he told me he worked as a graphic designer for a small firm downtown, that he'd moved to the neighborhood 2 years ago after breaking up with someone who'd made him feel small. I told him about Sarah, about how ending things with her had felt like the right thing and the wrong thing simultaneously, about how I'd spent the last 6 months in this weird limbo, not quite moving forward, but not staying still either. And then I saw you, I said, surprised by my own honesty, and something shifted. Good shift or bad shift? Terrifying shift. The kind that means I can't keep lying to myself about who I am or what I want. He walked me home that night, even though he lived in the opposite direction. We stood outside my building, the same spot where he'd waved up at me in the rain, and the silence between us was full of possibility. Can I see you again? He asked. You see me every morning, I pointed out. You know what I mean. Can I take you to dinner, or coffee, or anywhere you want to go where we can talk more and I can learn all the things I've been wondering about for months? I thought about saying no, about protecting myself, keeping things safe and uncomplicated. But safe and uncomplicated had gotten me nowhere. Safe and uncomplicated had meant watching life happen from a second-floor window instead of participating in it. Yes, I said. I'd like that. His smile could have lit up the entire street. Tomorrow? Tomorrow? He left, walking backward for a few steps like he didn't want to stop looking at me, then turned and headed down the street. I watched him go, then climbed the stairs to my apartment, my heart doing that flutter thing again. Except now I knew what it meant. Now I was letting myself know what it meant. The next morning, I was at my window at 7:15. He walked past right on schedule, looked up, and this time I waved. He stopped, waved back, and I watched him continue to the corner. Then I waited, counting the seconds, until he appeared again, walking past from the other direction. But this time, instead of just watching, I grabbed my jacket and ran downstairs. I caught up with him halfway down the block. He turned at the sound of my footsteps, surprise and delight mixing on his face. I thought we were doing dinner tonight, he said. We are, but I was thinking maybe we could get coffee first, right now, if you're not busy. I'm never too busy for coffee with you. We walked to Brew Haven together. B and Mel the barista gave us a knowing look when we came in side by side. I ordered my usual. He got his medium roast with oat milk, and we sat by the window watching the neighborhood wake up around us. I used to think I had everything figured out, I said, warming my hands on my cup. I had a plan, a good job, a nice girlfriend, an apartment, all the things you're supposed to want, but none of it felt right. I kept waiting to feel settled, to feel like I was where I was supposed to be, but it never came. And now? Casimir asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him, this man who'd been patient enough to walk past my window for months, brave enough to wave up at me in the rain, kind enough to give me space to figure myself out. Now I think maybe I was looking for the wrong things, or looking in the wrong places. Where are you looking now? Right here, I said, at you. We stayed in that coffee shop for hours, talking until Mel had to kick us out for the lunch rush. Casimir walked me home again, and at my door, he asked if it was okay to kiss me. I said yes, and when his lips met mine, it felt like everything I'd been afraid of and everything I'd been hoping for, colliding in the best possible way. That was 4 months ago. He still walks past my window every morning at 7:15, but now he comes upstairs after, and we have coffee together before he heads to work. Sometimes he still does the double pass, just because it makes me laugh, just because it's become our thing. This private joke about how we started. I've unpacked all my boxes now. The apartment finally feels like home. And every morning, I wake up next to someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves what he finds. Someone who is willing to walk the long way around the block, again and again, just for a few extra seconds of possibility. Sarah was right. Pretending was the cruelest thing I could have done. But stopping pretending, letting myself be honest about who I am and what I want, that was the bravest thing I've ever done. And it led me here, to this life, to this love, to this man who noticed me noticing him and decided I was worth the extra walk. Some mornings, when I'm standing at the window with my coffee, I think about the version of me from 6 months ago, the one who was too scared to even acknowledge what he was feeling. And I wish I could tell him that it gets better, that the fear doesn't disappear, but it becomes manageable. That love, real love, the kind that sees all of you and chooses you anyway, is worth every terrifying step it takes to get there. Casemir comes up behind me now, wraps his arms around my waist, rests his chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asks. "How you changed my life by walking past my window." "I think you changed your life," he says. "I just gave you a reason to be brave." Maybe he's right. Maybe we're both right. Maybe it doesn't matter who gets the credit because we're here now, together, building something real and honest and ours. Outside, the neighborhood wakes up. People walk past on their way to work, to coffee shops, to wherever their lives are taking them. And I think about how many of them might be watching from their own windows, wondering about their own Casimirs, waiting for the courage to step into their own stories. And I hope they find it. I hope they take the leap, because on the other side of that fear is something worth having, someone worth knowing, a life worth living, fully and honestly and without apology. Casemir kisses my temple. "Ready for the day?" I turn in his arms, kiss him properly, and smile. "With you? Always."